What to do, folks? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review G Unit's debut project, at least debut studio album, Beg for Mercy. Now, this is basically 50 Cent's second mainstream project that was in a studio release. And pretty much immediately, just a few months after he dropped his debut album, Get Rich or Die Tryin', he wanted to put G Unit on, which is a collection of rappers. So, for folks who absolutely don't know, Lloyd Banks is kind of like this real lyrical cat who raps real well a bunch, and then Young Buck was kind of the southern cat who they brought in just because I think they knew at the time, well, not just because of that, but because southern music was kind of blowing up with things like Lil Jon and T.I. and David Banner and folks like that. There is also a small amount of raps in here from Tony Yayo, who was an original G-Unit member back in 2002 on some of their mixtapes, but he got imprisoned and he just wasn't able to really do much of the album because he was in prison at that time. So yeah, so that's kind of the situation. This was actually a rather large album. It was quite successful. Didn't quite get to like diamond status of Get Rich or Die Trying, but it did a lot more impressive than I would have thought for like a group album. It almost went 3 times platinum. So I would almost say it's pretty much at that. So that's like Eminem and early 50 Cent status to kind of say that this project peaked at that well of execution, and really because 50 Cent was on just a particular as a whole high throughout 2003. This was the best kind of move he could have made to have followed up that point of interest, to not just have more 50 Cent for those who need it, but also to kind of say there's 2 new fellows and some hit singles on top of that. So it just was really just a slick move altogether. And I would have to say, like, the thing about this album is it really kind of has like some kind of like sophistication to it, especially for like 2000s rap, where it kind of feels like a lot more blue blood in a lot of ways. I was surprised, like you can tell by the single Stunt 101 that they were talking more kind of high fashion and grade A type stuff and more sophistication, compared to the singles that were on Get Rich or Die Trying. It just had a lot more fanciness to it, and that it may not be in the rest of the singles, but it does have that in some album cuts on here, so you may notice that. I did kind of like 50 Cent on those kind of vibes, even if some of those songs weren't quite as much hit potential as I thought. But yeah, this album had 5 singles, so it actually had more than Get Rich or Die Tryin' if you don't count the song Wangsta. So the first single was Stunt 101. This was the single I think this was the single that kicked off like the G Unit crew, and this is the initial song that I think this is the single that got folks introduced to Lloyd Banks and Young Buck, and they did quite a good job on there. I mean, 50 Cent gave one of his classic sing-songy hooks on here, and it just really, when I first heard this song back in the day, I thought it was just another 50 Cent song. I didn't realize until later that it was actually a G Unit song. I thought this was just 50 Cent. But, Lloyd Banks did a good job. Young Buck did a good job. Easy kind of. For folks that dismissed 2003 50 Cent, this is an easy one. This has easy hit potential. Like I said, this feels like a 50 Cent song. Feels like it was from Get Rich or Die Tryin'. So it's just another hit there. Poppin' Them Things is kind of more of like a buzz single and a street single. They used to drop street singles back in the day, but this was produced by Dr. Dre, and it pretty much has one of the best beats on the album. Dr. Dre back in these days, in the 2000s, Dr. Dre, every beat that he gave artists were very kick-ass in a lot of ways in terms of what was delivered. So Poppin' Them Things just has that instant kind of that piano beat that kind of is like typical of some Dr. Dre beats that he did. This easy kind of melodies for it. Great hook. 50 Cent, 50 Cent and Dr. Dre is just a great combination. It just made sense that this was a single. I would have said that this probably would have been one of the highest charting singles if it wouldn't have just been so gun oriented. But I mean, really, it made sense for this to be a street single. It was necessary. I'd say that it was definitely necessary. Dr. Dre beat, great 50 Cent hook. They tear the song apart, and it just works. I really feel like it needed to be a single. It's just a very distinct song by them, one of the best songs by G Unit. Wanna Get to Know You was a song that charted really high. This is the 3rd single, and this is probably one of the most popular songs from the album besides Stunt 101. and I feel like it had a real good hook from Joe, real good collaboration, nice R&B flavored song, just a great overall, nice sing-songy hook, great for the ladies. They do their thing on the song and are able to kind of showcase that they're not just street thugs that only know about gun violence and that type of stuff and flossing and that type of stuff. So it's just good to kind of get that as an extra flavor as like their song creativity. So 50 Cent, I mean, really, because 50 Cent only had like 4 or 5 hits up to this point. This was another hit, not just for G Unit, which is on their third, but also to kind of say that 50 Cent, who this was just another top 20 single for 50 Cent to kind of say, wow, he's really torn apart like 2003 and now 2004. But after that, the fourth single is another song for the ladies, which is Smile. This didn't quite chart as high. I feel like the kind of flash from Beg for Mercy kind of wore off by this point, but it was still a good song. And it was unfortunate that it didn't chart as high, but this was a kickoff to Lloyd Banks. This is what because the next project that was going to happen after the G Unit album was going to be Lloyd Banks's album. So really has a great hook on here. 50 Cent really nailed this one. He assisted Lloyd Banks, and then Lloyd Banks just got really lyrical on the song in terms of a flirtatious romantic cut. And Lloyd Banks can do some cuts for ladies, and he did well on it. Perfect introductory song if you were there for that, if you were a fan of Lloyd Banks before he dropped the Hunger for More. Easygoing, kind of just good relationship, romantic kind of song. I mean, the beat is kind of sappy, but I still like it. I used to like it way more back in the day, but I do find it somewhat sappy now, but it still serves its purpose, but it just has great lyrics and great hooks. So, but then there was a fifth single. Wikipedia says that there wasn't a fifth single, but I remember this being a song, a last ditch attempt to kind of pump out a little bit more juice from the album, and that was My Buddy. So this was kind of the second street single, another song for guns, and it really has like this has a nice 50 Cent hook on there. I mean, they were trying to aim for like the same kind of vein as Poppin' Them Things. This was produced by Eminem and Louis Resto, who Louis Resto he kind of sub produces with Dr. Dre a lot of times, but Eminem helped produce this song, and it really kind of has like a real breathy and haunting kind of beat on there. I really wish Eminem would have been on this project more and done more beats like this, because I mean, it really is like the least likely of a song to chart, but I still respect that they were trying to have street singles too, as to not sell out too much, just for folks who complain that folks went too mainstream and stuff. So they do two street singles. Real, like I said, real nice breathy kind of production, and just about like gats and guns, if you have that kind of angle. So it's just a great song for that. Nice street gangsta single, and they nail it real well. They all have a good job on it. Nice hook and that type stuff. So yeah, but I would have to say there are a couple of things. This is really just about as good. I would say maybe it's just a slight hair worse than Get Rich or Die Trying, which is basically nowadays like a classic rap album. It's basically as good, has numbers, layers and layers of bangers on here, but there are a couple of weaknesses I can denote. I feel like kind of the similar thing I complained about with Get Rich or Die Trying. There are some moments that kind of felt like filler, which I kind of feel like doing a song like the title track Beg for Mercy and then Footprints compared to doing hit songs like Groupie Love and I'm So Hood and G Unit and G'd Up. It just doesn't make sense that some of these songs are on here, and just like the stark difference to go from like a 9 out of 10 song to like a 3 out of 10 song or a 4 out of 10. It just really kind of felt kind of awkward. It just really kind of felt awkward the fact that the severe kind of quality drop in just between those kind of cuts could be in that way, and it just was surprising. And that kind of happened on Get Rich or Die Trying, where you could have like some really excellent album cuts on that album, like Don't Push Me and like High All the Time and those type songs, and then you would have some random awkward song on there. I don't remember some of the awkward songs from Get Rich, but it just kind of, I mean, that's what really stops this album from being a classic, but it is rather great, and that's kind of thing. It's pretty close. I mean, it's as good as Get Rich or Die Trying. Basically, the 1-2 punch, get Rich or Die Trying, and then get Beg for Mercy. It just makes sense to get them both. That is kind of the situation. But one of the other weaknesses is just the fact that where's Eminem? Eminem in 2003, it just didn't make sense. Maybe Eminem, Dr. Dre, and 50 Cent felt like G Unit needed to stand by themselves, but I feel like even one Eminem verse on this album would have been excellent because, 50 Cent showed up on what Eminem was working on in late 2003. He was on Tupac Resurrection, but Eminem should have dropped even like a 12 bar verse, even if it would have been like a short 8-bar verse or a 12-bar verse. It didn't have to be a 16, just a short verse. He could have just done like a quick verse at the beginning, and they all could have went crazy on there. I just feel like there was no excuse for that to not happen. Eminem was completely in his prime in 2003. 50 Cent was completely in his prime. And Eminem showed up on, 50 Cent showed up on Obi Trice's Cheers album, so you think Eminem could have returned the favor and showed up on the G Unit album. I mean, I feel like in some cases, with this whole popular I don't need no help kind of mentality, maybe that's why they didn't, but Eminem needed to be on here. But he did drop two beats. Eminem gave 50 Cent My Buddy and I'm So Hood, which I'm So Hood is just a real stellar 50 Cent song. There's no Lloyd Banks or Young Buck on there, but it felt like just like a leftover cut from Get Rich or Die Tryin'. That's kind of the thing. Dr. Dre, like I said, gave this project two beats. Also, another song that was a really big hit was G'd Up. Has a great beat, probably one of the best beats on the whole album, apart from Poppin' Them Things. One of the best beats on the album, apart from Poppin' Them Things, and it just works extremely well. I mean, I feel like, I'm not quite as mad at Dr. Dre. He did a great job. He filled what he needed to. And really, he didn't provide that many beats to Get Rich or Die Trying either. So it's just fine to kind of have gotten that. I mean, Lloyd Banks really tore G'd Up apart. I feel like, the G Unit crew just got inspired having beats of that quality because most of the other producers were not quite as top notch to that degree. I mean, they were good. Like, I feel like Lay You Down was a great beat, and Stunt 101 was a great beat by Mr. Porter, who was one of Eminem's buddies. Wanna Get to Know You by Red Spider was a great beat. Groupie Love was a great beat. I mean, there's just a number of beats on here that work. This is a pretty well-produced album, but I really feel like Dr. Dre just stood out in a good way on this project. That's this kind of thing, and so did Eminem. But it's just, it's kind of like, damn, in terms of that context, that what could have been. But so I'm going to go ahead and list the songs that I recommend, because there were 13 out of 19. So that's kind of the concept here. So I'll go ahead and list these songs I recommend to you. So Stunt 101, Poppin' Them Things, My Buddy, I'm So Hood, Wanna Get to Know You, G'd Up, Smile, I Smell Pussy, Collapse, Lay You Down, Gangsta Shit, Groupie Love, and G Unit. So to talk about a few of these, like Groupie Love is another really good cut for the ladies. I really like the hook on here, just real nice and sing-songy. I felt like this probably could have been a single if they had wanted to. Just easy, kind of soft and just plush production. And they do have some good cuts for ladies. I Smell Pussy is another kind of one. This is kind of like a diss song in some ways, where they're kind of insulting. I mean, it's either way. You can say I smell pussy because there's some bitch ass men, or you can say I smell pussy because you're talking about women. It's just kind of like a nice kind of plush song. 50 Cent kind of being sarcastic. I like how he did it. Tony Ayo's on here, and he does a pretty good job also. But it's just a good song. It's interesting to kind of get a song that can be for the ladies, but can also be a diss song at the same time. So it's clever that 50 Cent did that. Gangsta Shit is kind of like this low-key cut. Has one of the better beats on the album. It's just real kind of an album cut format. Wasn't trying to be a single, but I'm surprised at how well effective that one kind of went. Lay You Down has a great bridge. This is probably one of the best moments on the album, in my opinion. It just had a perfect anticipation of Lloyd Banks' kick-ass verse at the end, but 50 Cent really did a great bridge on there. Just really built some anticipation. I wish he would have done that a few more times on the album. It was just great beat, great, all good stuff about that song. And like I'm So Hood, like I said, is a leftover from Get Rich or Die Trying. It felt like just a great type feel. They had a nice intro in G Unit. This was real kind of like bravado and kind of New York, kind of Broadway type show kind of feeling towards it that I liked. Just some good stuff on there. So I will talk about a few of the songs I didn't like Footprints. I felt like Young Buck could have done a better job. I didn't quite enjoy the beat on there. I mean, I felt like Lloyd Banks just he kind of was the one that felt like he was going to be the next to blow up. I mean, Young Buck was really on the heels of Lloyd Banks, but I just felt like the Lloyd Banks solo song was better. And like Salute You and Eye for Eye were some of these fancy, sophisticated songs that I was talking about in addition to the G Unit song. But these just really felt like completely hardcore rap where they just felt difficult to recommend to folks that do not have rap on the brain like 110%. Like I feel like songs like Stunt 101, I'm So Hood, My Buddy, G Unit, and like Lay You Down can at least be recommended in a sense. But for folks that just like I said are not 100% about rap, if you want some pop in there, some Katy Perry, some Kanye West, some Bob Marley, some folks like that, is just that's kind of the situation. But it's not like they're bad songs. I do like this is a very well produced album. I feel like Salute You and Eye for Eye are good beats, but yeah, I didn't really care too much for Better Ask Somebody. I mean, that was kind of a lousy cut. I mean, it felt like that one could have been approached better. Just didn't wasn't quite too big a fan of the kind of the thumping and kind of pounding beat. It kind of felt a little bit out of character considering that most of the time they're more laid back or just kind of more scathing in their approach. But that was just kind of an awkward one. So yeah, that's kind of the concept. And also to talk about like a bonus track that seemed like that was kind of recent was Collapse, which was also on the 8 Mile soundtrack, which is basically 50 Cent freestyling to Till I Collapse by Eminem. I'm glad that that was on the 8 Mile soundtrack and it works as another hit on here. But just in case you didn't know that, 50 Cent actually freestyled to an Eminem beat and they threw that on here. So that's another good one. But yeah, so I'm going to give this album an 8 out of 10. I'm going to give this album an 8 out of 10. Just great stuff, great singles, all that type stuff, and just has an overall good vibe about it. Nice approach, good, well produced stuff. Lots of good things to kind of talk about. It's just kind of disappointing that Eminem wasn't on there, and there were just some kind of awkward choices compared to the quality of that was seen. It just felt like maybe they didn't run out of steam, but maybe they were somewhat winded and just kind of I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those situations where I felt like they probably could have replaced a cut like Beg for Mercy or Salute You or Footprints with something that was as good as Groupie Love or Lay You Down or Gangsta Shit or I Smell Pussy. Some of those type ones, but I don't understand why the quality dip kind of happened there. It just didn't make sense. But that's just kind of the situation. So the social score I will give a 9 out of 10 just because the two street singles both kicked ass and then the three attempts at singles beyond that were really good. But I kind of wish that they would have had another hit just in the general territory because they had two singles for the ladies, and then just one song like Stunt 101. I felt like they needed another song like Stunt 101. Just because this was kind of like the bridge to further 50 Cent territory, where Stunt 101 did a good job of introducing them. I felt like they kind of need another single like that. And of course, I would have definitely said an easy hit for them would have been if they would have teamed up with Eminem, but they just needed another single. This had a classic hook on there, nice glossy, kind of club oriented production like Stunt 101. 50 Cent just needed another song like, If I Can't or In the Club to kind of throw on here. But apart from that, that's about it. So 9 out of 10. In terms of the future, I mean, G Unit is basically over. I mean, 50 Cent has said multiple times nowadays that he's done with G Unit minus Tony Ayo. So he's just said he's gotten tired of carrying them on his back. And it's just kind of under the impression that's virtually it. But I am going to review more of these, so just stay tuned for more 50 Cent stuff that's going to happen down the road. But that's just kind of the stuff there. So 8 out of 10, good stuff here.